Hello everybody. This is a video on a very important Indian writer, Amitav Ghosh. As all of you know, he is a novelist, Jnanpith Award winning novelist. He has also written non-fiction, but of late he has also written poetry. Amitav Ghosh was born in Calcutta as the son of a diplomat. And he grew up in many places outside India also. He studied in the University of Delhi, then he studied at the University of Oxford. He did PhD in social anthropology, for which he went and lived in a village in the Nile Delta in Egypt. Now, from his first novel, The Circle of Reason, he has been writing very complicated novels of postmodern kind, using techniques like magic realism. The Circle of Reason came in 1986. It is the story of a little boy called Nachiketa Bose. He comes from Kolkata to Lalpukara village, where his uncle is living, Balram Bose. And this boy has a very uneven head, because of which he comes to be called Alu. Our Balram Bose is a worshipper of reason. And he studies Western science. He believes in cleanliness. He has a book, The Life of Louis Pasteur, which influences Alu also. And he starts a school called the School of Pure Reason, the School of Practical Reason. You know, those are philosophical schools associated with Immanuel Kant. He fights with a politician called Buddhadev Roy. And finally, in the village, there is one day a bombing, terrorism, and Alu is suspected. Our Balram dies. Alu starts running away. He is pursued by the police officer, Jyoti Das. He gets on a ship called Mariama, goes across the Arabian Sea, and finally he reaches the Middle East in a small oil-rich state called Al Jazeera, where the second part of the novel begins. It is the story of a trader woman called Zindi. She is trying to organize people. You know, everywhere it's like a microcosm of the world. Inside the ship, in the state of Al Jazeera. So many different kinds of people trying to come together into a community. She tries to give homage, refuge to lots of people, Zindi, for her own reasons. But from Al Jazeera also, our Alu has to run. Along with Zindi, there is a prostitute, the heroine called Kulfi, pursued by Jyoti Das. Then they reach the Algerian desert in North Africa. El Oud is the name of the village where they reach, where one Dr. Mishra, Indian, Dr. Mishra and Mrs. Verma, they are also trying to reform people. They are also engaged in science and reason. And it is here in El Oud that Jyoti Das and Alu finally meet. And these microcosms of the world are all full of disparities, disparate elements, heterogeneous people, experiences. And all that they have remaining at the end is hope. When the main protagonists leave the place, hoping to go back to their home, all that they carry with them is hope. So any kind of organization, any kind of unity is a myth. It is unrealistic. That is the theme of The Circle of Reason. All the characters think that they are moving in a linear way, using reason, but the vicious circle of reason, of karma, is again and again bringing back the characters to the beginning. That is the story of The Circle of Reason. The next novel came 2 years later, the very famous novel, The Shadow Lines. It is the story of an unnamed narrator and his family. Actually, it is the story of two families, the Datta Chowdhuries and the Prices. And the memories of the characters, the travels of the characters, the search or quest for identity within political turmoil, times of political upheaval. That is the story. It's like a midnight children's story. Going away and coming home, these are the two parts of the shadow lines. The unnamed narrator has an uncle, Trideep. They have a grandmother. He has a grandmother, Taima. Their stories are narrated. Their trials and tribulations and sacrifices, ambitions, frustrations, set across Calcutta, London, Dhaka over 115 years. That is the massive story of the shadow lines. And the title Shadow Lines shows that the lines or boundaries between people are actually shadow imaginary. There are no boundaries. There are no clear-cut boundaries between nations, between peoples, between cultures, between ages. It's all the same. The next novel is The Calcutta Chromosome, that was published in 1995. A novel of fevers, delirium and discovery. That is the subtitle. It won the Science Fiction Award. It is a science fiction novel. And the Calcutta Chromosome is set in New York at first. Antar, a low-level computer programmer, he is an Egyptian working for Life Watch Association. These people, the Life Watch Association, they are controlling, they are studying and controlling world's water resources. It's sometime in the future. And he comes across the ID card of a long-lost acquaintance, Murugan. He finds that Murugan, who was an employee at Life Watch, left the company and went to Calcutta because he was obsessed with malaria parasite and the work of Ronald Ross, who tried to invent a cure for malaria. And this story leads Antar into a bizarre experience across the world to, through Murugan's life and Ronald Ross's life. And he understands that the whole thing is controlled by a maze, an underground movement which was seeking to discover immortality by transferring the chromosomes of one person to another and things like that. And as the characters Antar and Murugan hunted the maze was also hunting them. The whole novel is like a puzzle. Every sentence, every incident, every character in the novel is like a part of a puzzle, a clue to solving the puzzle. It is a very complicated novel, I'm telling you. And then the novel, The Glass Palace from 2000. The Glass Palace is set in Burma, Malaya and India. And it centers on the one hand, the Burmese royal family. King Thabau and his queen Supayalat. They are very powerful. The queen is very clever. She killed off, almost 100 princes who would have been a threat to our king of Burma. And she was thinking that he is invincible, which is when the British came and defeated him and exiled him to India. There ends the glory of the Burmese royal family. The Glass Palace is a hall in their palace in Mandalay, but it also represents the fragile nature of their honor and glory. And the declining fortunes of the Burmese royal family and the politics of that time, set against the politics of that time, is pitted against the rising fortunes of an orphan boy who grows up and becomes a very rich and successful man. His name is Rajkumar. He marries Dolly. So the declining fortunes of the royal family of Burma against the rising fortunes of Rajkumar and Dolly. That is the theme of The Glass Palace 2000 novel. In 2004 came The Hungry Tide. You might already know that it is set in the Sundarbans. It is not the only novel by Amitav Ghosh set in the Sundarbans. He has written other works also referring to the Sundarbans later. In Hungry Tide, we have two main people, Kanai Datta and Piali Roy. Kanai Datta is seeking the past, seeking to rediscover the past through the diary entries of his uncle Nirmal, the husband of Nilima, his aunt, and what happened during the Morijjhappi massacre. That is what he's trying to reconstruct, the past. While Piali Roy is trying to research on and discover some penguins of a rare variety. She gets involved with a man called Fakir. And in this Sundarbans, their stories intertwine. That is the story of the Hungry Tide. Then there is the Ibis trilogy, which contains 3 novels: Sea of Poppies, River of Smoke, and The Flood of Fire. All these 3 novels are set in the early 19th century during the opium trade between India and China. The East India Company was buying and selling opium, and it led to a lot of political and cultural devastation in these countries. It is part of the Ibis, these novels are part of the Ibis trilogy because the Ibis is a ship where Sea of Poppies is set. This ship is going from Calcutta to Mauritius, transporting coolies to Mauritius. There is a storm which the Ibis is caught in, and then there is a mutiny on the ship. Didi is the protagonist in Sea of Poppies. In River of Smoke, you find 2 other ships, Anahita and Redut. And the 3 novels represent like microcosm of the world. You know, these novels are like the Tower of Babel. People belonging to different cultures, people belonging to different languages. Sometimes you don't even understand what is happening and what they are saying for sure. That is how the novels of Ibis trilogy are. And later in 2019 came the very major novel Gun Island. Gun Island is a story of a rare books dealer, Deenanath or Deen. He has come from Brooklyn to Calcutta. And Gun Island is again another bizarre novel where history and people's lives and fortunes are intersecting. Remember Nilima from The Hungry Tide and also Piali Roy? They are characters in Gun Island, and it is also a novel partly set in Sundarbans. Then there is a verse book that he wrote, Jungle Nama 2021, the first verse book by Amitav Ghosh. And Jungle Nama is an adaptation of the Bengali folk tale of Bon Bibi, a forest deity. This book is also set in the Sundarbans. And then there are a number of non-fiction works that he wrote, Amitav Ghosh, In an Antique Land, published in 1992. It is an ethnographic text about his PhD work done in the Nile Delta village. That is the first part. The second part is the story of the 12th century merchant Abraham Ben Yiju. Dancing in Cambodia and at large in Burma, Countdown, The Imam and the Indian, Incendiary Circumstances, etc. followed. These are the books that followed. And at the end, recently, he has written 2 books on climate change. Very important. The Great Derangement and The Nutmeg's Curse. So that is an overview of the entire corpus of Amitav Ghosh's works. I hope you're inspired to read some of them. They are not an easy read, I tell you, but once, like The Wasteland, once you read and understand and enjoy them, it'll be an amazing experience. So thank you guys. Happy reading.